Hello, everyone. I'm James Milan. Welcome to this episode of Talk of the Town, which is taking place not in our studio, but at the Fox Library, and with two guests that we've had here at the Fox Library before. Anna Litton, the director of our libraries here in town, is with us, as is Adam Del Molino, who is a board member and particularly one in charge, involved with the committee that is hopefully having a big voice in what happens here at the Fox. We last talked, and first of all, welcome, guys. Obviously, it's really good to be able to have a chance to speak with you. I'll just remind our audience, many of you may know that we were here about 14, 15 months ago to talk with some excitement about the prospect of changes and renovations at the Fox Library, which included some pretty ambitious plans at that time. As I said, we kind of shared our excitement about that then. And since then, there's been some sobering news, and I'll let you guys kind of carry that narrative. But we did want to get a chance to just kind of talk to the people who know about what is going to be going on or could be going on here at the Fox in the next little while. So with that long introduction, let me just kind of hand it over to you guys, and whether it's you, Anna, or Adam, you want to start with letting folks know kind of what we talked about last time, what the outcome has been, and then go from there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks so much, James, for taking this time to chat with us. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and to talk about the Fox Branch Library, our beloved library here in East Arlington. When we met in January of 2024, we were discussing the process that we were in at that stage of applying for Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program grant funds to support a rebuild here at the Fox Branch Library. That project took over a year. A lot of dedicated people spent a lot of time working on that grant process, which involved a large community engagement component. It involved us bringing an expert into our space from Library Planning Associates to help us understand both the need and the potential here at 175 Mass Ave. It was a great process, and in May of 2024, we first of all secured a wonderful vote at town meeting. As part of our grant process, there was an article of appropriation before town meeting, an article of appropriation for $150,000 to support the planning and design phase of a potential rebuild here. Town meeting members overwhelmingly supported that article with a vote of 178 to 6. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly.
Yes, those three people's vote mattered though. And then at the end of May in 2024, we submitted our grant application. And in January of this year, January of 2025, grant awards were made, and unfortunately, those funds were not awarded to Arlington in the 2023-2024 grant round. So we immediately decided to look at some next steps. What was going to happen next for this process? And I would say that the first piece is that the board immediately decided that they were committed to continuing this work.
Yeah, I want to hear more from you about that, Adam. But I do remember, actually, of course, back in January, on our news, we reported at that time that was the outcome. And I do remember saying that, that an awful lot of people had worked for a long time for this. And, for me, I was feeling disappointment on your behalf, but love to hear the fact that the board's immediate reaction was, we're not being deterred, we're going to move forward.
Yeah, I think the sense of the board is that this is a project that we put a lot of time and effort into, and that this is a branch library that is beloved in this community. It's well utilized. It's the 10th most used branch library, I think, of all the libraries in the state. And given, kind of the age of this building and the inaccessibility of this building, I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of continue this work here. We need, more and larger workspaces. You can see the workspaces here are kind of cramped. If you look behind you, we got books on racks and the space for kids to play. It's kind of cramped. We need better workspaces for our workers here from Arlington that want to be able to come here and do some work quietly if they have the opportunity to. We also need the space as well so that there's really kind of division from between the adult workspaces and the children's play spaces, because we know that this is kind of East Arlington's living room. This is a place where people want to be able to come and the kids can immediately run into, and they're immediately surrounded by books. But if they want to be able to play with toys and take out other materials, they can do that. And I think that's really the key thing here is our board is just, we're thrilled. Anna's done tremendous work leading all these efforts, and we want to continue to move forward with this work because it is important and because this is an anchor institution for East Arlington, and it really deserves the attention from both the state and the town.
Yeah, in a sense, what I hear you guys saying is this has reached a this particular branch library has reached that status of 10th most used in the state, not because of, but rather despite the various obstacles to people being able to use it the way we all would like to. I guess that's so.
Yeah, and remember, we're building on the shoulders. This building was on the verge of closure back in 2004, 2005, 2006, that kind of range. And if not for the efforts of so many people in this community to keep this building open, we would not be where we are today, where we're actually, expanding. We have 87,000, unique users that come into this library every year. It's just remarkable numbers for a library of this size, because there aren't that many we like to call them third spaces. Mm-hmm. The home, the work, but where are the third spaces? This is one of those third spaces in our community, and we got to be able to continue to kind of support that kind of initiative and give people the public space that they want and crave.
So if it's not just kind of back to the drawing board and looking to see what happens in the next grant cycle, what else are you guys considering and is on the table?
Yeah, I want to say, first, I do want to say that although we were not successful in securing grant funds through this grant cycle, the work that we did was so important in identifying priorities moving forward. And all of these pieces that Adam has just mentioned, our need for workspaces for adults, our need for engaging children's spaces, our need for some sound separation, acoustical separation here to really make this building work the way that a branch library should work in a community like Arlington. Those priorities were laid out so clearly because of the work that we did to complete the grant. So it was a really meaningful and valuable experience, and we have some real actionable items moving forward. So we have a much clearer vision of the kind of library space that our community needs and deserves. So that in and of itself is it's coming out with that is fantastic. We have a better idea of the kind of library that's going to support our residents.
Right.
So with that, our next step is to work with our partners at the Arlington Libraries Foundation, who will be launching a capital campaign in the next, I'm not going to put a date for when that's going to start, but we have some real partners who are interested in supporting the private side of moving this project forward. We are looking forward to the next MPLCP grant round, which is anticipated to be in 2027, 2028, but I don't, there's a lot of flux in the world right now, so we don't know how that will pan out. And then, of course, we're going to continue to investigate any other options for helping to bring some additional funding to this location. The community, we know the community wants and deserves a new library here. We know that from the feedback we heard during the community engagement phase of our grant process. We know it from the vote at town meeting. And we just need to really start being creative about how can we fund this? What does it mean for the community to fund this building? How can we do this with a mix of grants, with a mix of money raised from residents in the town, with town funds, and what could that look like? So we're really kind of thinking about a different economic future here.
And then the other piece of this is the accessibility issue. And for me, as a child of a parent with a child with disabilities, it's really important. This building is not accessible. you have a 7-inch step to have to be able to get up to be able to get into this space from Cleveland Street. So that really makes it incumbent upon us to be able to make sure that we have a handicap accessible entrance, preferably a few entrances. We also need to make sure that we can have an elevator to serve the meeting space in the basement of this building as well. What's really interesting and unique is our legislative delegation, Cindy Friedman, Sean Garbely, David Rogers, actually have a bond authorization that is an existing authorization for up to $1 million in funding, essentially to help us with the potential construction of an elevator for this library. That money stays on the books as something that we could potentially access. We'd actually have to lobby our governor and our neighbor and this administration and potentially ask her if this administration could include it among all the projects that they consider for the debt and the borrowing that they do on an annual basis. So that's another opportunity and another space for us to kind of put puzzle pieces together, if not for the library funding that comes from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, which is a separate pot of money. But there are many pots that we're looking at potentially to be able to support the reconstruction of this building.
I'm wondering, you were mentioning that the next grant cycle is a few years away. And I have no idea what the answer to this question is, and I want to preface it by saying maybe you guys don't either. I don't know. But do you get in terms of them rejecting or not moving forward with this grant? Did you get feedback about why that is?
Yes.
And can you share some of that with us, because it's useful to you going forward?
Oh, very useful. Absolutely. Thank you for asking this question, James. It's a great question. First of all, I am very proud to say that the parts of the grant that we had the most control over, there were 4 graded sections of the grant process for evaluated areas, really. And the 2 that we created, really, we received very high marks on. Our building program, which is really the core output from the community engagement phase, from everything we learned in our work with the library building consultants who came to support us, we received the highest marks in our tier. We were in the small tier cohort, so I was very proud of that. Our statement of need received very high marks, so everyone acknowledges the need here. We had some room for growth in the area of municipal finance. There are some other communities, for a number of reasons, that received higher scores in the municipal finance category. And our site is small. Our site options received lower marks. The true area, though, that the separator, the reason that we did not secure the grant in this grant cycle and other communities did, was our need factor. And I think Adam can describe what the need factor is and why it's important really well. So
right, yeah. So I think as we've had this conversation, we've talked about this before, is we have to recognize that Arlington, in comparison to many other communities in the state, is a much wealthier community than the communities that we're competing against in this category. And so the way that the state prioritizes funding for a lot of these services is based upon a community's ability to potentially support an initiative of this nature or not. And the state's really trying to lift up those communities that might not otherwise be able to do that. And so for our perspective, we need to have a conversation as well, because Arlington, in contrast to some of the other communities that we're in competition with, is growing. And not only are we growing, we are tremendous readers and supporters of libraries. And it's almost like we should have a separate category for us and for many unique communities that maybe are growing in the eastern part of the state, that, in recognition of the fact that these communities are continuing to grow, and they're providing a lot of economic activity and engines for the state of Massachusetts. So it's kind of, you really appreciate the fact that communities that might not otherwise be able to support libraries are getting that support and they're being lifted up. Yet at the same time, you also want to say, we have a great community here. We have a AAA bond rating. We have managed our community finances really effectively, and our town meeting, our Board of Selectmen, and our Finance Committee have been incredible stewards of taxpayer funding in this town. What are we missing? That's the ultimate question I think that we ask is, what are we missing here? We've made tremendous investments in our high school, in our public works building, through our public safety buildings in the town. We've done a lot of work and investment in those places. I think part of what we're asking for now is, the libraries have not been updated in almost, we're going on 30 years
Yes,
now.
30 years.
We've not made an investment in the library since the Robbins Library renovations back in the mid-90s. So, my kids weren't here. I was not here in the mid-90s. I'd love the opportunity to be able to renovate these spaces here in the mid-90s. 30-year renovations on the Robbins Library for a building that's almost more than 100 years old. This building, more than, really built in the 60s and the 70s. We're kind of at the very end of the lifespan of this building as well. It's really incumbent upon us to kind of look back at our public facilities again, like I said, in the third sector areas that we have in town. Yes, we have coffee houses, but there's nothing like a library.
Well, it's almost, listening to you, it almost sounds like we're hoisted on our own petard here because we care so much, and we are a big bunch of readers, as you say, and so therefore, again, we are at a deficit in terms of this competition for these funds, but also we might be just that community that the grant deciders are saying, no, they'll figure this out. If we don't give it to them, it doesn't mean the end of this. It means they'll figure it out some other way, which is, in fact, what you guys are, the message that I'm getting from you.
Yeah, it is interesting. The two communities in our tier, the small tier libraries that received, the small size tier libraries that received grant funds were in Springfield and Freetown. These are communities that do not have the wealth that Arlington has. So it is really interesting to look at that. And we are a community of readers. The Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, the governing body that manages this grant program, they don't know what the future looks like. And Adam's points about maybe we need a different category, they're already looking at that. In my conversations with them, they've said, in our next cycle, we might look more at urban communities and more rural communities in a different way. This grant round, the tiers were by small-sized, medium-sized, and large-sized communities, or large-sized libraries. So in a small-sized library, you can be a small-sized library in a branch location in Boston, in Arlington, in Brookline. You can also be the town library in some small town out in the Berkshires. So, we have all those communities. The size of your library doesn't tell you a lot about the community.
When you say small tier size, and you say like this branch library is the equivalent, therefore, of maybe a main library in Freetown, which I don't even, hopefully nobody from Freetown's listening, but I didn't even know there was a place in Massachusetts called that. But is it circulation? Like what makes something small versus medium or large?
Footprint. So in this grant cycle, small-sized libraries were under 14,999 feet.
Oh, so it's literally the size.
It's just the size.
Just the size.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is when you look at this library, we said this is the 10th circulating branch, but there are main libraries that don't circulate as many. There are towns that don't check out as many items.
I would think that there are quite a lot of towns actually. That would be true.
So that physical size, I understand why a grant awarding committee would be interested in that, because physical size doesn't change how much it's going to cost to build your building, but it doesn't. That leaves out a lot of data.
I think the other thing too, we always sit there and say this, but reminding folks that we have the 5th highest children's attendance of programs in the entire state, and every other community that falls into that category, that bucket, are cities. They're large cities, right? They're the some of the largest cities in Massachusetts.
So we are the busiest town in that way.
We are,
in the
without
state.
a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think that's really reflective of a couple things. It's a reflection of the fact that people are looking for things to do that are not very costly or free. And library activities are free to everyone. And that's one of the big key issues that I think, and then you have to remember is that people are spending almost 1/3 to 1/2 of their incomes in some cases on housing. Right? So if that's the case and they're going to be living in these communities and they want to raise children in these communities, they're going to be looking for free activities wherever they can find them. And the library serves that role. We have our incredible programming in the summer, with all the concerts by the library, out behind the Robins. We do programming here. There's just tremendous opportunities, and I think it's really important for folks to understand that we are a well-used and well-loved library.
Mm-hmm. So in the last round of when you guys were applying for those grants, as you said, there was a warrant article up in town meeting, which got that overwhelming response you were talking about. Are you planning to use that process as well moving forward now? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are bringing another warrant article, a non-binding resolution to town meeting for 2025. This resolution will invite town meeting members to voice their support for this project. This resolution is just a resolution to show that the town is committed to continuing to investigate options for development here at the Fox Branch Library. Right now, I would say we are in the stage to make sure that we are ready for every single funding opportunity that we can identify, and to continue to build support, to continue to help people understand what the Fox is, what the importance of this location is to residents here, is our next step. And so I'm really looking forward to this resolution as an opportunity to, again, share with members of the community what the Fox is, who visits the Fox, why, and to help people understand that voicing support for this library now is a stepping stone for us to build our case for support wherever we can identify funding options moving forward.
We talked about that 178 to 6 vote.
178 to 6.
There was, so many members of the Board of Trustees and so many other members of our community and our friends organizations and the board of the foundation, they were all in contact with all of the members of town meeting, or they went to their precinct meetings, many of which were on Zoom. And it was really incredible to kind of just see that every meeting that you went to, there was somebody there advocating in support of the resolution last year, and hopefully we'll have that same support once again, asking folks to go to their precinct meetings and remind them, please support the resolution in support of the Fox Library. It's going to make a tremendous difference. It is that stepping stone that Anna talked about to get us to where we want to be, to demonstrate that support from the town of Arlington.
I want to ask you about something that, when we were here last time, we were talking about not only the necessary renovations or rebuild for the Fox itself, but the possibility that there would also be additional construction, above the building as one of the things that we were looking for, additional housing, affordable housing, et cetera. Anything, like, I know that you guys may not be able to speak to that at all. But I'm just wondering if that is also part of the vision going forward, or at least still on the table as something to be explored as you move forward with funding options, or what?
Yeah, so we have been, the planning department, Claire Ricker at the planning department did secure significant funds to work with MAPC on a fit and feasibility study for housing here, for housing co-located with the Fox Branch Library. As part of that study, there was an open house here at the Fox Branch Library in September to learn more about what did residents think about that idea and to gain some information there. That was a great event. Adam, you were here. There was a lot of people voicing a lot of opinions about that. It was really interesting to hear all of that. The MAPC work is wrapping up, and a full report of that project will be available to the community at some point in the future. I don't know when that project is going to be finalized. But I can say that, again, that was been a fascinating project. And one of the pieces that we learned through that work is something that in the library side has always maintained. Whatever happens, this is a library first project.
Yeah, that's certainly what I imagined, and it sounds like anything going forward will be like what it would have been were you to have gotten this grant, which is you proceed forward with that in a big way, and then you work in conjunction and collaboration with the planning department to see whether the other
Right.
option is also available.
Yeah. My responsibility to the community, our responsibility, Adam's on the board, mine as the library director, is to create the best possible library spaces for the community. And that is always my intention.
And I think the other thing to remember is, and I think we need to be clear about this as well, is we're looking for a reconstruction here, right? And you used the word renovation previously.
It's really rebuild.
It's really a rebuild, that this is an inadequate space for the current footprint that we have here right now. And so when we go for, this is, I look at the offices here, and those spaces are inadequate for the library of the 21st century. And we need to make sure that our librarians have the spaces that they need, the kids have the spaces they need, and the adults have the spaces they need. And don't forget, we also have the Fox Shop over there in the corner as well, which also provides funding to support this library here and offset some of our salary funding here for this library. So that's an incredible piece as well that we are very fortunate to have.
Let's just kind of wrap up. Let me ask you guys to wrap up. You've mentioned all these things, but go ahead and remind folks just before we sign off of what the various steps forward are going to be.
Yeah, so first I do want to say we were really lucky to submit the full MPLCP grant package in May of 2024, of course, with the support of that overwhelming vote at town meeting. Once we received that grant decision in January of 2025, we immediately started thinking, well, what's going to come next? And the piece that comes next is us going to town meeting and looking for that support via a non-binding resolution to really ask the community. There's no money involved, but we do ask you to support our efforts to continue moving this project forward as we work to put the pieces together for whatever other funding opportunities we can identify. Anything else?
I think from our perspective and from the board's perspective, it's looking at all of our partners, the town, the state, the foundation, the friends groups, the Fox and Robin Shop, all of our partners that have kind of kept this library going and continue to kind of support this library, and most obviously the patrons that come to this library. We really appreciate their support, and we know that this is a well-loved institution, and we want to continue to lift that up in any conversations that we have with folks, to remind folks that this is a construction project that is really worthy of taxpayer funding, state, town, wherever we need to go, that this is something that will have incredible benefits for God only knows how long.
All right, well, I'm going to close by just saying, let's all close our eyes for a second, you out there and us right here, and just imagine ourselves having our first Talk of the Town interview in the new Fox Library space. And we don't know exactly when that will be, but I hope to be right here with both of you. And that will definitely be a day to celebrate.
Thank you so much,
Thank
James.
you, James. Appreciate
Absolutely. We'll keep track, obviously, of the process between now and then, but it's a lovely vision with which to close here. I've been speaking with Adam Del Molino, who is a board member at the library, Board of Trustees member, and Anna Litton, of course, the director of our libraries, here from the Fox Library, the beloved, inadequate Fox Library. I'm James Milan for Talk of the Town. Thanks for joining us.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.